Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Education Research in Conflict and Protracted Crisis, UCL ERICC Seminar Series. My name is Tejendra Pherali. I'm Professor of Education, Conflict and Peace at University College London, and I'm Co-Research Director for the ERICC Research Program. I'm delighted to be able to welcome you to this seminar series. This seminar series actually builds on a long-standing education in conflict and emergency seminar series
I'm good.
The Center for
Just tell me
Education
more
and
about what's
International
happening.
Development is organizing, has been organizing, and you will be able to watch our previous seminars recorded in our YouTube channel. I'm particularly delighted to be able to welcome you all, as well as the presenters today, because this is one of the first webinars of our new series, which actually brings together a range of research that is taking place across various contexts that the ERICC Research Consortium, as well as British Academy bilateral chair programs are conducting. I would like to provide a brief introduction to the ERICC Research Program before I introduce the presenters today. One of the objectives of today's webinar is to try to build some synergy between the ERICC research programs that are taking place in 7 different countries and the research activities that bilateral research chairs are conducting in 3 different countries. So hopefully we will be able to carry on with this dialogue and synergy as we move along. As you know, that a large number of school-aged children have been affected by conflict and crisis globally. Almost 1/3 of children in conflict and crisis settings are out of school, and about 57% are in school but are not achieving the minimum proficiency levels in reading and maths. Only about 11% are reported to be achieving the minimum levels of literacy and numeracy. Oops. I did something with my slides. And there is a chronic lack of research on how children in conflict and crisis learn and develop. And the kind of research, kinds of educational programs and policies that actually contribute to improve education and well-being outcomes for children in conflict and crisis settings. This is further added by the methodological and ethical challenges that we face in conducting research in conflict and crisis settings. In the recent years, there have been an increasing number of studies in our field. However, the research evidence is not organized systematically, and it's often located in disciplinary silos. And there's a need to bring the research knowledge together in order to provide a coherent understanding of the state of the field, but also to help improve access, quality, and continuity of education in conflict and crisis settings. In order to address that challenge, ERICC program have 4 different components. Component 1 and 2 primarily focus on producing research evidence through effective approaches, and also providing technical assistance through help desk are led by International Rescue Committee with the academic leadership from University College London. Component 3, which involves evidence dissemination and uptake, is led by IMEE. and the component 4, which is a British Academy supported bilateral chairs programs, which aims to strengthen institutional capacity of Global South research institutions. And today's presentations will be actually delivered by the British Academy funded bilateral chairs that I will introduce the colleagues in a second. So basically, the component 1, which is led by IRC, is a multi-year, multi-country research consortium funded by FCDO, and it aims to build a robust and coherent body of rigorous research evidence to inform education policy and practice, to effectively improve learning and well-being for children in conflict and crisis settings, and contribute to more peaceful, equitable, and socially just societies. These are 7 different countries where the component 1 of the research program, ERICC Research Program, focuses on, and 2 of the countries overlap in the bilateral chairs programs. For example, Bangladesh and Lebanon have 2 bilateral chairs, and of course Iraq as the 3rd country where the BHS programs are running. These are 4 key principles of the ERICC research program. So one is we've developed a conceptual framework that basically helps us organize the fragmented body of research knowledge in our field, and also to help shape the research in the future, which is coherent and which asks the kind of questions that advance our field, and the knowledge is coherent and organized. The second point is about recognition of the political economy of education in conflict and crisis settings, that a lot of educational programs are not able to address the challenges around access, quality, and continuity because educational processes are situated within complex political economy environments where the power dynamics often cause barriers, and it is important to recognize the enablers of those educational processes which contribute to the drivers of learning. The third principle is related to the process of co-construction of research agenda, which in all focal countries we've generated research agenda through a rigorous consultation with the local stakeholders who are the beneficiaries and advocate of the research that is produced. And finally, the research methods approach, which actually focuses on a process of systematic research knowledge production, ranging from focusing on formative research to design research, implementation research, all the way to effectiveness research, with the view of scaling up the kind of initiatives that actually produce positive outcomes. As part of that, we've developed this conceptual framework, which is based on the evidence that conflict and protracted crisis adversely impact on educational processes, children's safety and well-being, and their academic achievements. So the conceptual framework recognizes that educational processes are affected by political economy dynamics, as I pointed out earlier. So the framework works as a theory of change, that it helps us critically identify and analyze the conditions that affect children's holistic learning outcomes. It hypothesizes that the most effective ways to improve children's academic, socio-emotional learning, physical and mental health outcomes, and broader societal conditions such as social cohesion, peace with justice, security, etc., is actually to improve access to quality of and continuity of education. So the framework underpins a political economy of education, as you can see in the diagram there, the infographics there, that recognizes complex global, national, regional, and local power dynamics. in which education is implicated, recognizing the victimization or weaponization of education, as well as the potential liberatory and peace-building role of education. So we hope that this conceptual framework will help research in the future to address some of the pertinent questions in our field. So with this spirit, I'm delighted to be able to welcome the presenters of today's webinar, Professor Kelsey Sanks, Dr. Mahasayeb, and Dr. Justin Howard, who are British Academy Bilateral chairs. And I would like to first invite Dr. Howard to make her initial remark. Dr. Howard is an academic at Swansea University and holds the bilateral chair with civil society organizations and academic institutions in Bangladesh, and she'll be able to speak for about 8 minutes. And then I will invite Professor Kelsey Sanks, who is the bilateral research chair based in the University of Ulster, the UNESCO chair as well, to present her work on Iraq. And then finally, Dr. Mahasayeb, who leads the bilateral chair, who's also based in the University of Cambridge and the Center for Lebanese Studies in Lebanon, to present her work. And finally, I will invite Dr. Simone Datzberger, who is Associate Professor at University College London, with us to make some comments on the presentations, and then we'll have a few minutes for Q&A at the end. So now, can I hand over to Dr. Justin Howard? By the way, I forgot to mention that this webinar is being recorded, and all the comments that you contribute will be recorded, and this is for the wider dissemination via the INE. So over to you, Dr. Howard.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. As been introduced, my name is Dr. Justine Howard, and I'm based at Swansea University in Wales, and I hold the Bilateral Research Chair, which pairs myself with BRAC University in Bangladesh, specifically BRAC Institute of Educational Development and BRAC Institute of Governance and Development. My background is actually not in emergency education, so I'm one of the people that I think Tejendra was talking about, mopping up into the ERICC network and bringing us together with people who have been working in the field perhaps more predominantly over their academic careers. But my background is in educational and developmental psychology, and I'm particularly interested in evidence in the benefits of play and playfulness for children across developmental domains, and I have a particular interest in emotional health and well-being. Many of you will probably know that BRAC are one of the largest NGOs operating in Bangladesh, or internationally actually, and they have a very well-established play-based curricula for early years children, for early years displaced children in the Cox's Bazar region. And so the remit of our project really was to extend the work that's being done by BRAC to older children, because obviously as children have spent a lot of time in this context, they're getting older, and the provision is not necessarily there to support them as they move into their middle and latter childhood years. So that's really the kind of area in which we're focused upon. We're very much based on developing interventions, so play-based interventions, which are culturally relevant to the particular populations that we're working with. And that's something which has been a predominant area of my academic career. So trying to identify what it is that children define as being play and playfulness, because that is what optimizes play as being a useful developmental tool for functioning across these different developmental domains. Trying to change my screen? Okay. So UNICEF reports that children represent 50% of refugee populations. And of course, that impact is very significant across all developmental domains, but very little humanitarian funding is allocated to education. And as a result, coming up with sustainable interventions is very important. And one way in which this can be very well achieved is by ensuring that any interventions are culturally relevant and very much co-constructed with the population in which you're working. And this gives a sense of ownership and engagement, and it's far more likely that those kind of interventions are going to be pursued over time than if you just kind of go in and tell people what they ought to be doing. It also ensures that everything that you do is relevant to the cultures which are working. And I think that's been one of the central things that we've learned as we've been going through this program, is that play means different things to different people in different situations. And unless we recognize that, it's very difficult to put together culturally relevant programs which will have the best developmental effect. So our aims are to design and deliver play and learning interventions in educational and community contexts, not only in the camp, but also in host community settings, and that these will contribute to cost-effective and sustainable approaches to education systems in Cox's Bazar. And if they emphasize cultural relevance, it's more likely that those things are going to be pursued over time. We currently have quite a large portfolio of projects, which is really good in terms of our remit to develop capacity in research in terms of our British Academy role. 6 of our projects are very much focused on the Bangladesh region. So we have the 6 there on the left. And then we also have 2 other projects which are kind of offshoots of our British Academy work, which are based in the UK. So one of those is on sanctuary schools, which is an initiative in the UK. And one of those is based on Flying Seagulls work. And Flying Seagulls are a charitable organisation who go in and provide play and entertainment for children who are in crisis settings. But the 6 that are really focused on just telling you a little bit about today are the ones which are focused in the Cox's Bazar region. And as I say, BRAC is very well known for the work that they've done with children from very early years up to about the age of 6. And our work is extending that into middle childhood up through to adolescence and early adulthood. So the 6 projects that we have ongoing in Bangladesh are the Creative Club Project, Adolescent Play Labs, Green Play Labs, the Voices of Coexistence Project, and most recently a Youth Skills Census and a Life and Employment Skills Project. So the Creative Club and the Adolescent Play Labs are very similar in some regards, and they each are designed to be co-constructed by children themselves. So what's really nice about these 2 projects is children themselves have developed even the environments in which these play activities take place. So they design where things go, what things look like from the onset, and the types of activities that they're going to do. So they bring things from their own culture, and the idea being that that is going to boost them by giving them a sense of autonomy and independence at a time when obviously they have very little control over things that are going on around them. So, excuse me, the Creative Club and the Adolescent Play Lab are both functioning in that way with a view to improving mental health, confidence, and self-esteem. The Green Play Labs are an extension to the normal HPL models. I say normal, but the humanitarian play labs that have been ongoing in Cox's Bazar by BRAC for quite some time. And what these are intended to do is to try and make children become more attuned to the environment in which they're living, to make them aware of things that are going on around them, and also enable them to perhaps bring in elements of their previous culture, previous experiences from the life that they perhaps once lost in the form of the green environment. And this is a really interesting project because even in spaces which are very, very small, you see very good use being made of the smaller spaces, or even when there aren't any green spaces. So for example, the creation of vertical gardens, the creation of green spaces within the internal environments of the play lab. And what this project has tended to demonstrate thus far is how much it can integrate the perspectives of the parents, not only the mums, which can often be the predominant focus, but also the dads. So the dads can get involved in this by bringing their knowledge of what they used to do in terms of growing things, in terms of the food, in terms of the environment, the culture and the climate, and the changes in the seasons. Sharing that knowledge with their children really leads to the creation of a really strong bond. So that's what they're designed to do. The Voices of Coexistence project is one which is a comparative piece of work, which is looking at how children perceive sharing their spaces within humanitarian settings in Cox's Bazar and also Algeria. And the aim of this kind of comparative work is to look at, are there similarities between the experiences that children have in host communities, which can help us come up with ways of ensuring much more harmonious existence when children are in the long term sharing their communities with different cultures and different groups of people. The final two projects are really linked together, and these are the ones which have most recently started. And the Youth Skills Census is designed to find out what skills do adolescents have when they're in these communities, and how do they match with the kinds of employment opportunities or the types of skills they need in order to become adult citizens in these environments. And the idea is that by finding out what those skills are, that can act as a roadmap for the development of a program of training, an educational program for children in that age group, which will best prepare them to become part of that environment in the longer term. And to support that, we also have an international literature review being undertaken based on life and employment skills to find out what kinds of approaches are being used internationally to help support this, and how can they be integrated into the Cox's Bazar region. So those are the 6 projects that we currently have underway. Our project didn't start until much later than the other 2 chairs, and so we're only just halfway, not really even halfway in our project. So we're currently in the process of collecting data. We've collected most of our pilot data and developed the tools that we need to be able to gather the evaluation data to be able to look at effectiveness. So at the moment, this is the status of affairs for us, where we've got everything in place to be able to collect the data, and data collection and the activities are currently underway. But that's where we are. Thank you, Tejendra.
Yeah, thanks very much, Justine. That's really exciting. Thanks for sharing your work. Now, can I ask Kelsey, please?
Okay, and hopefully see my screen. So yeah, my name is Kelsey Shanks. I'm a professor at Ulster University, where I hold the UNESCO Chair in Education for Peace Building and Human Rights, and now also the Bilateral Chair, which I share with Dr. Shirko Kamanj between Ulster University and the University of Koya in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. So my presentation might be slightly different to my fellow chairs in that a lot of our project is focused on capacity exchange rather than research. We do have a lot of ongoing research, but we're not at a stage at this point where we could present on the findings. Our project also has a symbolic third partner from the University of Mosul in federal Iraq. So Ulster work across the Kurdistan region and federal Iraq on this project. So the chair project is locally known as Education, Peace and Politics, or the EPP project, and it focuses on expanding research that critically engages with education. So we all know that schooling is shaped by the prevailing politics of the moment. It's fundamentally political, even if the politics are often opaque or supposedly depoliticized. Political manifestos, pledges, and shifting legislation reflect changing political priorities, define and redefine education, and limit what schooling can be. Structural injustices can be intentionally embedded in the education sector through unjust distribution of resources, state neglect, and discriminatory curriculum for marginalised communities. So in education, in conflict-affected contexts, it's even more complex and can be even more highly politicised, with a range of internal power dynamics impacting resource allocation, educational planning and delivery. Rather than acting as a vehicle for peace and human rights, education can be manipulated by various state and non-state actors for political motives. Yeah, what we found and what inspired this project is that in many conflict-affected contexts, the study of education remains a technical subject within higher education. With degrees in education preparing teaching staff in pedagogy and education management, and kind of maintaining an illusion of education being a neutral subject. And Iraq's one such context. There's little space in Iraqi or Kurdistan, the Kurdistan region, higher education for postgraduate research that critically engages with the role and purpose of education, which leads to an absence of engagement with social justice or political economy analysis within this field that's generated locally. So EPP aims to strengthen critically informed analysis of education in Iraq and support local researchers to explore education's role in building sustainable peace. The objective of the project is to help generate knowledge that can inform socially just education systems and provision for children and young people. We facilitate individual, institutional and environmental capacity exchange in support of education research in, like I said, both federal Iraq through the University of Mosul and in the Kurdistan region through the University of Koya. The project provides tools, resources and mentoring to over 20 education researchers from across the country and hosts a network of PhD researchers from across the Middle East. And we hope to challenge the northern domination of knowledge production in this context by supporting a new generation of early career scholars and practitioners to undertake political economy analysis within the field of education. So I'm just going to spend my allocated time, which I know is quite short, just taking you through some of our activities and highlighting some areas where people online might want to get involved. So my slides aren't changing. There we go. So this is our team. We're made up of two chairs, myself from Ulster and Dr. Sherko Kamanj from the University of Koya. We have 5 research fellows. I don't have time to go through everybody, but it would be really great if you go to our website and you can check out the really interesting research that each of our fellows is conducting. We have 4 associated PhD researchers that are also located at Ulster. Each member of the team has their own research focus within the field of the political economy of education in either Iraq or Syria. And we have a central project focusing on the role of non-state actors in education in Iraq. And like I said, I won't have time to introduce everybody's projects today, but I really would encourage you to look at our research fellows' research online because they're doing some incredible work. And I'm happy to expand on that in the questions if necessary. So as I'm also a visiting professor at the University of Mosul, I've worked closely with my colleague, Professor Kobas, who is like our symbolic third chair. And this project has therefore tried to mirror all our activities that we do at Koya across the University of Mosul and try to have some sort of parity between how we interact with the two universities. So we have established research groups, one in each university, so one that's conducted in Kurdish and one in Arabic. The groups are made up primarily of early career researchers drawn from political science, law, education and history. Both groups have attended a series of face-to-face training workshops spread out over a year, covering both political economy theory and academic theory of social justice and education, peace and conflict theory, and also a focus on research skills, methodology and research ethics. We're working through a process of learning through practice. So we've taken these researchers also through a mentored process of designing their own small research projects and thinking through the ethics of their projects and creating their ethics applications. Some of the participants are taking these actually forward with their mentors to conduct the research, and we're continuing on that path with them. Others have not got the capacity to continue into their own research, but they're actually helping to deliver follow-on cascade training in their own faculties and universities. So we've co-designed a training of trainer guide based on everything we've covered in our in-depth training as a kind of basic introductions to the topics that's been developed together. And the non-research active participants are going to be cascading the training with their departments and faculties. So that's one element of our work. Institutionally, we're focused on strengthening the research management systems within Koya University. This doesn't extend to Mosul because we have the formal partnership with Koya. It's focused on due diligence processes, research management and ethics processes, and expanding Koya's networks. For example, we've had collaboration with the University of Guelph in Canada on student collaborative projects. We've developed research proposals with Galway, Penn State and Sussex universities. And we have a spin-off library capacity development project with Mossel that will be mirrored in Koya in the next 6 months. We also have another essential part of our group is our international PhD early career researcher network, which is made up of our associated PhDs and our research fellows who lead on this work, and brings in a network of people from across the globe who are working on educational peace in the Middle East. This is where I'd like to extend an invitation to anybody who falls in this category to reach out, because this group have been incredibly active in terms of blog writing, meetings, and just developing a really fundamental peer-to-peer support structure as they go through their own individual studies. So we also have developed a partnership with UNESCO and to try to support the wider environment of what we're trying to achieve within academia. We've conducted 2 research training workshops with the Department of Curriculum from the Ministry of Baghdad, looking at peace building and inclusive curriculum design, and also brought together and done an intensive training, 5 weeks online, with a series of researchers from outside our partner universities from across Iraq. So I will conclude just to say that we were due to hold a conference in Koya, bringing together everybody in November, but because of Israel's violent aggression and attacks on Lebanon and Israel's occupation of Palestinian land and genocidal violence against the Palestinian people, the region's in turmoil and it's no longer really appropriate for us to hold the conference. So we're postponing until February next year. So I will stop there and answer questions after. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kelsey. That's again very, very exciting project, and I'm sorry that the situation is becoming really dire and people are really struggling. So just expressing our thoughts and solidarity in the region. Can I invite now Mahat for the final presentation?
Hi everyone. I'm going to try to share my screen. 1 minute. Okay. Okay. All right, so I'll be presenting today research that I've conducted with my colleague, Katrina Boone and Serene Saab, and the study is available online on the website of the Center for Lebanese Studies. Okay, so for those who are familiar with my work, I've been conducting research on education of refugee children for the past 15 years, and I've always been tempted by the possibility of mapping the literature that has been produced on refugee education over the past 20 years. As we know, the field has grown and flourished a lot over the past 20 years, thanks to the increasing investment, but also the increasing attention of humanitarian agencies to the education of refugees. Finally, education makes it into the provisions of humanitarian agencies. After it used to, most of these plans were restricted to saving lives. So this is a very positive development. So I was curious to see how this is reflected on the knowledge that has been produced, who's producing this knowledge, what is it focusing on, and who is it serving. Okay, sorry. And the other, while it's a great development to see this increasing interest in refugee education, we know that because it has been led a lot by development and humanitarian agencies, we noticed that a lot of the literature and the policy documents and the work that's done on refugee education is very close to policy. And it was interesting for us to see, okay, how does that impact the kind of knowledge and scholarship that happens? At the same time, we know that globally there's an increasing call for localization, but often we don't talk about localization of knowledge production. And so we wanted to explore, is this notion of localization, has it been extended to knowledge generation and production? And as we know, there is an increasing call for decolonization in all sectors, but including in refugee education. So how does it also reflect on knowledge generation and knowledge production? And particularly forced migration as a field has been historically criticized for having a colonial legacy as well as a humanitarianism. So what we were trying to do, so these are the questions of the study. We wanted to understand, the body of knowledge that has been produced. We wanted to understand the geographic and institutional patterns between particularly the global north and global south. And what is this research trying to address? What is it interested in? What are some of the concepts and the theories and the debates that are being present in this body of knowledge? Okay, and in this study, we didn't only focus on English, we also focused on Arabic knowledge. So what has been produced in English, in peer-reviewed journals, as well what has been published in Arabic in peer-reviewed journals. This study does not encompass all other types of knowledge that are important, but we did not encompass in our studies because this is not the only form of valid knowledge, and we're trying to emphasize this is not the only valid. There are many other forms of knowledge that are important, but in this study, we're only focusing on this particular type. Okay. So I just want to, while in this study, I'll be talking about North and South, we are not very comfortable also with this reductionist way of seeing also the word, because we know that there is, as you will see in the Arabic knowledge that's generated, there is also a North within the South and the South within the North, and there are lots of inequalities that exist across the spheres, and we were wondering whether we still want to use these terms, and for the moment we are using them, but we're not sure if this is the best reflection. And in our study, what we are really trying to understand, as this field is a new field, we wanted to understand, okay, so what, based on this body of knowledge, what is the meaning and purpose of education? We wanted to understand how do they see refugee education, what purpose it serves, and as well as understanding how is this knowledge produced and generated. And one important angle that we wanted to shed light on is how refugees are represented also in this study. Okay, so what did we do? So this today, most of the work I'm going to present is based on the second study, where we're analyzing the literature, 800 English peer-reviewed articles, as well as 700 English articles and 90, almost 100 Arabic articles. We also mapped the research that has been funded on forced displacement in the past 20 years. We also analyzed, we conducted a very small study of citation analysis. So who is being cited and who's citing who in this literature. So when we look at the the research that has been funded, we noticed that obviously it's the Global North institutions and funders, Research Council, INGOs are funding this research, while a small percentage of funders are coming from the Global South. In terms of who is holding the grants for these studies, we noticed the universities continue to play a significant role in knowledge production and in conducting research, while also INGOs are increasingly developing also their own research groups. So who is holding the grants? As we see, the vast majority of the grants that have been funded have been held by Global North institutions. Where is the study taking place? So again, we're seeing the paradigm of the Global North researching the Global South. And this is, I think, particularly, with the refugees, 80% of refugees are in the Global South. So obviously, a lot of the research is also taking place in the Global South that is currently being funded. And those who are conducting the research, they are Global North institutions. So when we look at the body of knowledge over the past 20 years, so is it true that our feeling, what we're observing is that there is an increase of publication? Yes, when we looked at the both at ERICC and Scopus, I didn't go into great details into the methodology, but please, if you go back to the report, which I will share at the end, you will see a very detailed description of the methodology. So we do see that the field is rising, and it has probably due to the Syrian refugee crisis, but also I think due to the campaigns to include education in the humanitarian response, that there is an increasing interest. When we look at, okay, where is the study being being carried out. So it's interesting, it's still a significant body of knowledge is being conducted as well on by Global North actors on refugees in the Global North, but also an increasing body of literature is also being carried out on refugees in the Global South. And when we also look at where are these studies taking place and where are the refugees, it's not necessarily proportionate to where the refugees necessarily are. Okay, and do we see any comparative research? And the reason why we're interested in this is often we find, if you look at UNHCR 2030, document 2030, but also I think another publication is 2009, which in some ways really paved the way for refugee education, we notice that they don't talk about refugees in the Global North, as if refugees are only in the Global South. And that, I have argued that it has contributed to the reification and objectification of the way we talk about refugees. And there's very limited comparative research because they're seen as two uncomparable experiences, which, though in our, when we go into actually the literature, we see on a meso and a micro level, the teaching and learning experiences of refugees, whether in the Global or North or South, are very similar, but there's limited focus on this comparative research. In terms of authorship, who is producing the knowledge? So the vast majority of the knowledge that has been produced in single-authored papers, have been produced by Global North countries. And when they were having co-authorship, it was even Global North were also the people who are the second authors. So Global South actors were really playing a very peripheral role, and they are the subject of the research rather than the producers of the knowledge. So when we look at, okay, what were they focusing on in their in the vocabulary that they were using and the focus of their abstract. So we notice in the English literature focused on the Global North, there was very much a strong discussion of policy, and they were making policy recommendations. Literature in the Global South, where even if it's conducted by Global North actors, but the study was taking place in the Global South, we noticed that there were very limited policy discussions. And when we look at the level of analysis and who's the subject that's being analyzed, we notice that most of the literature is engaged with the students' experiences, very limited discussion on the community level, but also hardly only 2% of the studies had policy analysis and policy discussions, which is really interesting and probably explains also the nature of the near policy research that's being taking place, but also how critical these studies are. I'm going to skip the methodology. When we look at citation, and I think, you know, the literature that most cited in the most 20 cited articles on Scopus and refugee education are all produced by Global North actors, and they're only citing the Global North academics. So, which I think tells us a lot about the power dynamics. So, what do we learn about this nascent field? It is a field that it's a heavily political field. It's refugee. Most of the displacements happen because of conflict, and we know that historically forced migration has been criticized for having colonial legacies. We see in the field of refugee education, we are just walking down the same path, producing the same extractivist kind of research, where we are going to the Global South, telling them, you know, we are drawing the research agenda, we are extracting the data and publishing it, and, you know, building our careers, but also building a whole field. And I think these inequalities are still present. We do see also near policy research. So that's why probably there's limited critical research that is happening. I think it's beginning to emerge more and more in the past 4 or 5 years. And I'm very optimistic about what will happen. I know that I've used most of my time. I just want to finish. We've written an op-ed, which will hopefully be published soon, But we do see in this field the impact of the Western humanitarianism that is growing in this field. We see very limited discussion about the purpose and objective of education. We see also very limited discussion about the political nature of these, both the conflicts and the solutions. So this is why we say it's a political field, but it's a very depoliticized scholarship. And I think now as we see a genocide that is unfolding in the region, we notice a huge silence amongst scholars of forced migration, although, you know, like they of any particular scholar, they know they work in a field of context, so they know politics is at the heart of what they do, yet unfortunately they chose to be to stick to this extractivist model. We do see unequal voices where refugees are almost absent. And I think this poses and prompts us to reflect on the whole sector. And here I want to use my colleague Mario Morelli's thing that he shared during the base. And are we going to be the body pickers where, you know, we take this aid funding and we do this research, but we do not really analyze and tackle the funding of the war that is happening. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Maha. That was really, really thought-provoking as always. And I think these are very important questions to ask that we sometimes lose attention from these critical issues that dominate our field while we are specifically focusing on the humanitarian conversations. Now, can I invite Simona for a very brief comment and questions so that we can save a few minutes for Q&A?
Of course. Hello, everyone. And I'll try to keep this short and just stick to a couple of minutes. First of all, I really want to thank all of the three speakers for their time and also for sharing their fascinating and really important work. I think each project in itself shows very great importance. And it sort of like also tells us that we can, first of all, decolonize research by learning from conflict-affected, but also often marginalized or oppressed communities. And also thereby paying really very close attention to the local cultural, economic, but also political context or geopolitical context. And also that it is possible to think far more critically about how research is conducted, analyzed, and implemented, and at the end also to whose benefit. I think each project in itself also showcased that research can either or should translate into practice, be it in the form of interventions for children through having a more child-centered approach, or through establishing far more stronger networks within the local community, such as in higher education, or as we've just heard in the last presentation, by kind of like changing our also epistemological lens and research practice. And this also sort of like implies to how do we collaborate, with whom do we collaborate, and what can we do to really change unequal power hierarchies that continue to persist in research and also, of course, far beyond. Very quickly on Justine's work, I found your portfolio to be really impressive. I particularly appreciate your child-centered approach. This is of tremendous importance given how highly traumatized these communities are in a way. These children have lost their home, are often bereft of their identity, and in many cases also experienced loss of family members and friends, among many other things. So I think your projects showcase the importance to not treat children as objects or so-called beneficiaries, but really help them also to restore a sense of control in an environment where everything seems to be out of control. So my question for you would be, looking back into your past work and also into the past projects you have been involved in, what have you learned from those projects and from that research, and how does that sort of like now inform your current project? Maya, I found your presentation really, really thought-provoking. when I skimmed through your slides yesterday, I had to very sort of like briefly think about how we all criticize the concept of the liberal peace project over the past 15, 20 years or so. And that then in return has sparked a lot of focus on the so-called local turn in peace building and also peace, conflict, and education studies. And I think, Maha, what you were showing us with this project is that the so-called local turn is really not enough. We really need to think much, much deeper and also really challenge when we apply Western epistemologies to understand the situation of refugees. And also sort of like really question, okay, who is conducting the research, and quite often it is done by those people who are actually quite detached from the real experience. I suppose my question for you, Maha, would be, we have a huge interest among our student cohort here at UCL on refugee education. So we've supervised numerous master's dissertations on the topic. So what is your advice from you for supervisors, but also for those students to change our approach in engaging with this type of research and the topic? And Kelsey, I think in several respects, your project sort of like puts in a way also a little bit into practice what Maha is critiquing by challenging the northern domination of knowledge production in conflict-affected contexts, and also by, and this is what I find really inspiring, creating and also strengthening a new generation of scholars and practitioners in the field. So I find this really impressive, and I hope that more or similar projects can be funded of this type. I suppose what I was wondering when I looked into your work is to what extent the diaspora is engaged, also to work with local research institutions, as we quite often face the problem of a brain drain in conflict-affected environments. And we've got now the second, third, sometimes even fourth generation of people living abroad. And I was wondering what can be done to also strengthen these relationships academically. So these are my 2 steps. And thank you.
No, thanks. Thanks very much, Simona. I'm aware that Kelsey needs to go. Kelsey, would you like to very quickly respond to Simona's question? And then hopefully we can leave a couple of minutes more for Justin and Maha to respond as well.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. And it's it was the intention of our international network to be able to bring in both diaspora and others working on the region together to create that kind of peer-to-peer support network, and link that with our early career researchers in our Iraqi networks. A network that's doing it brilliantly and that we've been slightly involved with is the Syrian Academic Research Network, SWAN, I think, SAN. We've worked with them in terms of they've been bringing their diaspora academics from Syria together in the UK for a number of different workshops, and we've sponsored an education working group within that work. Some of their membership overlaps with ours, which is how this has come about, and it's certainly an area in which we want to learn from them how they've worked in this space and how they've captured these opportunities, and something that we could certainly look at replicating for Iraq. But thank you for the question.
Thanks very much. Are there any questions? So what I would like to do is to maybe take 1 or 2 questions, if they are very brief, from the audience, and then ask the presenters to comment. Just we're running out of time, but I just wanted to show respect to the audience as well. Abdi, please go ahead. It needs to be a brief question, I'm afraid.
Yes, definitely it's going to be, because I'll be teaching in 4 minutes. Thank you very much, Tejendra. And thoroughly enjoyed reading your piece of writing. Great ideas. I just want to really touch around the diaspora, academics and the diaspora communities. And I think I really welcome any kind of examples of best practice where diaspora academics actually engage in this sort of areas. And I really appreciate if anyone can share the contact details of any other details. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abdi. That's a wonderful question. Any other questions from the audience? Maybe. Oh, okay, there you go. Yamin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for this event. Yeah, I already asked from the chat box. Yeah, I would like to know that. Yeah, is there some project of ERICC? Yeah, that dealing with our country? Yeah, Myanmar. There's also a long ongoing crisis. I would like to know that some project that focus on our country. Yeah, I'm very interested for that. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Yamin. An ERICC program focuses on Myanmar. So we've got a couple of projects ongoing, and please do get in touch via email, and I would be very happy to have a conversation with you. Thanks very much. Can I ask now Maha and Justine maybe 2 minutes each to respond to the questions that Simona raised, and also the question that Abdi raised. First, would you like to go ahead, Justine?
No problem. I think that my question was, what have I learned from my past, which has fed into the work that I'm currently doing, if I can remember correctly. I think all of the work that I've done really with marginalised groups or traumatised children has been based on listening very carefully to their voices. And my underpinning principles of my work, especially in relation to play, is that play means different things to different people at different times. And so really we can't presume to know what is best for children in different contexts, and certainly there can't be simple transference of one practice to another culture. And so really listening very carefully as to what's needed and why is very important. And I think that kind of feeds into what Maha was saying about why are we doing these interventions, what is the education for, what's the purpose of the education. And I think that's very much guiding what we're doing with our projects in the Cox's Bazar refugee area, in that we're trying to establish, what do these children need and why do they need that? And how can we best tailor the support that we're trying to create for them, which is informed by their needs and informed by their voices. And I think that's the same in all contexts, whether that be in the north or in the south. I mean, I've done a lot of work in hospital contexts, and very much the play provision there is about giving children autonomy and control and independence at a time when they don't have autonomy, control and independence, and that's crucially what makes play such an important vehicle for optimizing development and for supporting children through trauma. And so I think, the key thing is to listen and to ensure cultural relevance and cultural appropriateness, and that it's supporting the needs of the societies in which we're working.
Great, thank you. Maha, please.
Very quickly, as I have 1 minute. So, Simone, I think two things I would mention. There are many things that one can add, but one of the things is, what do we consider as knowledge, and how do they, when they're doing the literature review, often we notice that our students, particularly as they would be biased to Global North scholars, and they would not draw a lot on scholarship in the region, but also what they would define as valid knowledge is also, I think we need to redefine that. So I usually encourage my students to engage with what refugees might write in local newspapers or their different platforms. So that would be one important thing, is what do we define as knowledge and what do we cite in our literature review, but also how do they also define and engage with the research ethics and their positionality within that research. And unfortunately, positionality has been reduced to a statement, or I'm this and that, but that's not what positionality is. What does their positionality do to the study? But also, their position within that community. Are they and sometimes within a master's degree, it's difficult not to be extractivist, but to think of how one can address that issue. In terms of the diaspora, I think, and this is where I'm also reluctant about North-South, because how do I define myself? I'm a person who moves between North and South, but I think diaspora has a very important role in providing a different perspective as well on the research and the field. But I think we need more of that role, particularly in academic networks and professional groups. The diaspora has a very important role and voice to say there.
Yeah. Great. Thanks very much, Meher and Justine and Kelsey for those wonderful presentations, and Simona for your comments. Thanks everyone for joining the ERICC UCL seminar series, the first webinar today. Really appreciate it. I want to also express my thanks to Dr. Hiba Salem, who's been behind the scene supporting enormously to put together the program, but also Ariana for supporting us, as well as Aini for promoting the event. And this, as I said, is a seminar series, and we will be in touch with the new events next month and following, and hope you stay connected and continue attending these conversations. And I wish you all the best for the rest of the day, and look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.